Hello everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel, or welcome back to it. Yesterday I posted a video about my story, or just part of it. Yeah, of course the full story would take a lot longer than an hour to go through everything, and I don't really have time to go through everything. But I'm certainly not in one video anyway. I may do it in a couple of, I may add to it in a few more videos in the coming weeks, months, years, maybe. We'll see. Of course, as the journey goes on, and there's certainly a lot more to explain and to share. So, I mean, I have shared some things on YouTube, and I have certainly shared a lot of things on my Facebook Live over the past few years since COVID, really. But I would like to, I think, at some point get some more of it on YouTube, but we'll see what happens. So today I'm going to be talking about regrets and poor decisions, and some of the things that essentially, well, it kind of is, I suppose to some extent, a bit of an extension from the video of yesterday, in the sense that I'm going to be going through some of the, I guess, upon reflection, in hindsight, some of the good, but also in a long term grand scheme of things, I think what turned out to be some poor decisions, really, on my part. So we'll start from my childhood. So I guess the first place to start would be when I was probably about 6 or 7 years old, I would imagine, where, like most young children, we fall into that trap of friendships and wanting to be liked and wanting to be seen to be part of a group, not to be deemed an outcast, or you know, we all fall. You know, it wasn't. I mean, it's hard to say because I was only a child, but I think as a kid I was quite temperamental, sensitive, very much more than I am now, and I have been through my adult years. As I think a lot of children tend to be anyway, up until a certain point, tend to be quite you know, just you're in your own little world kind of thing. And I think for a long period of time, I think I felt alone at school, and I guess I was looking for someone to perhaps in a way shield me from that, and to shield me from, I don't know, I thought maybe I was like looking for someone that I thought maybe would sort of, it wasn't like a conscious thing or anything. I'm just thinking back to it now from psychological point of view, and I'd imagine that it was more about pressure, but also it was just about I don't know. I think I felt that the friend, my first real friend that I had, David, as it was called, Flea from then, David Holton, as he became. I think the reason I became friends with him, if I'm going to be honest about it, is the fact that he just seemed more popular in the class. He seemed to have, his family seemed to have more money than mine. He seemed to be more likable. seemed to be, yeah, just more popular really. And I remember like him handing out like invitations to his birthday party and things like that. It's like it was just, I don't know, it was just something that left an imprint on me. It was just something that I found, and I don't think like the first few times I don't think I went to any of his birthday. I don't know even know why he did that. I mean, I don't know unless he was already friends with quite a few. I don't know, but anyway, he had birthday parties, and I think that people used to get invitations for it and stuff. I think of like a bouncy castle, and they were quite popular back then. So that ended up happening, and eventually, I can't remember exactly how it happened. I think I just sort of just like progressively, just slowly but surely, kind of just like became friends with him somehow. I can't recall exactly how it happened, but I just remember I must have like gone to. I mean, I always saw him anyway at school, so I guess maybe I just eventually just started talking to him, and we just sort of eventually just became friends, and mainly because we were just in the same class, and I think he'd already sort of developed friends with other people. It tended to be the more maybe popular is a bit of a strong word, but it was certainly. I don't know. It was just. I think it's just because his family, his grandparents had a bit of money, and I always remember this was a bit later on, but I always remember him, like his grandfather's car, and he had like a Ford Granada, I think it was, Ford Scorpio, I think it was, or it might be a Granada. Like heated seats. It was like this was all like middle class stuff to me. This was like this wasn't something that I had in my family. It's like in my family, my parents knew people with cars, but it's like we didn't have a car. So it was I was introduced to new things, and like I guess a family that I guess had a bit more of their life together, and they had a bit more money, and I think people respected them to some degree a bit more, I guess, than others. So that's basically, and not, it wasn't just that. Of course, it was the fact that we was in the same, most of the same classes together at school. Went to the same primary school. We went to the same secondary school. So it was, and we lived very close to each other. It was only about 10 minutes away from each other. So, 10-minute walk from each other's places. So, I do apologise if you hear the noise of the rain in the background. It's peak rainy season here in Bangkok, Thailand. So, I think it'd just be a passing shower, but you just never know at this time of the year. It can rain all day. But anyway, so yeah, that friendship came into being. I can't remember exactly when and how exactly. I think it was just sort of a natural progression over a period of time. We just sort of became friends, and we just started hanging out together. And you might remember more of it than I do, to be honest. At this point, I probably does. But I just remember going to his house a lot, especially like I used to go to his house in the morning, and we used to. It was always me going to his house, though. I never. It was very, very rare that he ever came to my house. And to be honest, I think my parents didn't want anybody in the house anyway. So I used to go to his house quite often in the mornings. We used to watch Transformers and like Digimon and Dragon Balls. David, I think he was very much into the Americanization thing that was going on back then, with quite a lot of the UK. Really, I think the UK was like heavily influenced in many respects by American culture in the 90s. Like if you think about the popularity of things like The Simpsons. What's that other program called? I can't think of what the name of it is now. South Park, things like that were very, very popular. Beavis and Butthead, those were very popular things that a lot of people used to watch in the UK during the 90s. And like cartoons, like Japanese-based things, like Pokemon. I think Digimon was just Japanese. I think. So I used to go to his house and watch things, probably for a good hour or so, and then we used to walk to school together. So that was, and every now and again, like used to his granddad would turn up in the car, in that car, this long black, quite classy looking car, really, honestly. It was Ford Granada for what it was. Like heated seats, and it was just, to me, it was just like it was a different world, and I suppose, like, I didn't, unknowingly, that I think at the time, but upon reflection, I think, to be honest, I think that's why I stayed friends with him. It's because of that. There was, no, I wasn't using him for it, but it was just like it was a benefit of, it was one of the benefits, small, temporary benefit of being friends with him, really. I mean, I think we had a bit of an odd friendship, really, because I don't think we were ever really, like, we never really truly had each other's backs. I don't think we can ever really say we were like I don't think we were ever. The thing is, I considered him, and I still consider him to be one of my friends. But would I say that he was my best friend? I think for a period of time he was. But I think as the time went on, we kind of sort of grew apart from each other, and we kind of just didn't really like each other that much anymore, I guess. And he just had some annoying habits, and I had some, and I think we just kind of got sick of each other's shit at some point. And eventually, I think he was more inclined and interested in his other friends, and than he was with me. And I was also gaining friends. I was hanging out more with other people at certain periods, especially during the late 90s and early to mid 2000s. Like it really, I mean, up until sort of like, I'd say from 2001 up until about 2003, I was hanging around with the wrong crowd for a long time. But I'll always be thankful to David, because, as I said in my last video, he was the one that, in a way, kind of like helped me to break away from the bad habits and things that I'd got into, and I went on a different path after that. And David was partly responsible for that, so I'll always be thankful to him for it, because if it wasn't for him, my life would have gone in a different direction. So, oh, by the way, I'm not actually sponsored by Pepsi. It just happened to have this in the fridge this morning, and I wanted to drink it. So I think it was a kind of a mixed bag of it. Upon reflection on it all, it was in some ways I kind of wish I hadn't stayed friends with him for as long as I had. Certainly certainly towards 2007, 2008 time, I think things were changing. He was changing, I was changing, but he was getting more involved with what later became his, I don't know if they're married or not, but they've been together for probably a good, not far off, it's nearly 20 years now, so they've been together a long time, and but anyway, I sometimes regret kind of being friends with him for as long as I did, but I'm glad that I had the friendship, and I had the memories and the opportunities and things, and we had some good times, we had some good laughs, and we had some good times together, and we got each other for our school days, and so in that regard, I'm thankful and glad that I had a companion, and I had someone to, I suppose to some extent, I think I think I kind of respected him more than he did me, because I looked up to him more. But maybe he looked up to me in different ways, perhaps. I think he saw me later on as a kind of bit of protection in school from the bullying that we got, because I knew some of the kids that were kind of like would bully people, and I think I was a kind of a shield, I think, to some extent from that. So I think in to be quite honest about it, I think we both saw each other as, later on, not we didn't intend it to be, and I don't think it was like a conscious thing, but I think in the back of our, maybe like some extent, maybe right in the back of our minds or whatever, maybe we kind of felt like we were kind of like shielding each other to some extent. Maybe I'm not sure if that is actually the case, but sometimes I did think that. I've thought that over the years, and I think I felt that at school sometimes as well. So that friendship kind of came into being, sort of flourished for a period of time. Certainly up until sort of 2007, 8 time, 9ish. We were still friends really up until, I suppose, the last year that I think we can genuinely call each other friends was 2009, I think, 2009, 2010-ish, maybe, but certainly 2009. But I mean, to be honest with you, I think our friendship had been quite fractured for, I'd say, the better part of about 2 years, really, because he'd kind of basically forgot about me, I think, at a certain point. Or I didn't, maybe not forget, but I just think he wasn't interested in being around me that much anymore, and I don't know whether that's because of, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was just that he just didn't like my personality more, maybe he thought I was being too negative sometimes or something, or maybe he just found it more interesting to be around. Because I remember him spending a lot of time with like Ashley, and more than anybody else, I think they tended to be, they were a lot more closer towards the end of our friendships than I think I was with either David or Ashley. I think they had a shared interest in the youth group thing. I'm just going to turn the light on because I can't see fuck all. So I think in the end, just as people do, people change. You know, people's his lifestyle changed. I think his tastes, his hobbies changed, and the kind of people that he wanted to be around changed. And I just didn't fit into that. I guess I just didn't fit into that anymore. And I think, to be honest with you, I think once I got to college, I was kind of a bit over it, I think, at that point anyway. So that was in 2006. And I think by that point, I was just kind of like, I think I was just sort of ready to meet new friends, I think. I was ready to kind of move on with my life, because we'd known each other since probably, 96. So we'd known each other for a good 10 years. So, you know, it's time just went on, and as people do, people change, and it just pitted out eventually. It just we saw less and less of each other. David was obviously spending much more time with his partner than he was with anybody else. He wasn't in, I remember like being a BB, and he wasn't in BB anymore, Boys Brigade anymore. And that was in 2009. So I think really I'd sort of like, for me, like, going to Boys Brigade was the gang of us really that made it. It was me, David, Mark, Raymond really, and Ashley when we saw Ashley. I think we might have all gone together at a certain point, but most of the time it was either me and David going, or it was me and Raymond going to Boys Brigade, and then we'd meet everybody in the same place. So we had some good times. We did, and I suppose this video is about regrets, and we're going to go on to other things in a moment. So I suppose what I regret is I think maybe our friendship was sort of built on a bit of dysfunctionality, I suppose, when I look back on it. But also it was built on the fact that we kind of, like, everybody needs someone to get through school. You need something to cling on to. You need someone so you don't feel all that pressure and you sort of feel a bit guarded from everything, especially when you're in a new environment with new people. And I think that's kind of partly why that friendship came into being and why it lasted so long. And also I remember him going, like it mentioned, like he had a holiday trip to America. I think he once invited me to go there, but I couldn't go because I didn't have no money because my parents never had any money. As always. Sorry about the rain. I'm just going to move this to dampen the sound of the rain. Sorry about that. So, hopefully that works a little bit. So where do we go from here then, really? Well, I had a lot of friendships when I was a kid, so I wasn't like as unpopular as I sometimes think, and I suppose I was lucky. I had some decent friendships really, and I had it's sort of intermittent or I had phases like most people. I had short-lived friendships and longer-lived friendships with people, and some of those friends that I had, I do regret being friends with now really, because some of them got me into some really bad habits and bad ways, and I for a few years I was getting into a lot of trouble, and I'm doing a lot of things that I regret now. I mean, look, it was certainly fun at the time. I'm not gonna pretend, but it was regretful really. Vandalising and throwing stones at people's houses and just being a mischief really, just being rebellious and just causing trouble on the estate. Like almost getting into trouble with the police and getting into trouble with the police. But so yeah, I certainly regret like friendships with that I had with certain people. Although I suppose I learned things from them, and it was fun at the time, and it wasn't all bad. But I think upon when I look back at it now as a 34-year-old man, as opposed to a very young person, looking back on it, might not feel quite as much shame. But I think now, as I've gotten a little bit older and matured a bit, I feel that I was an embarrassment, I think, to my family, but I was also embarrassed by my family. I was ashamed of the people I came from. I was ashamed of my I was ashamed of my parents. I was ashamed of the household that I grew up in, the people I was surrounded by. the fact that we never really had any money, we never really did anything, we never really went anywhere. And it was just miserable really a lot of the time growing up. It was in the house at least. It wasn't very pleasant. I mean, more than anything else, it was just the boredom really. It was just utterly boring, and that's why I just got my head into playing PS1 and PS2 for as long as I did, and I think partly why I got addicted to the internet when I was like 15, 16, because there just wasn't much else to do really. It was like, and everyone was sort of going their own ways at a certain point, and everyone was sort of starting to get serious and crack down on starting to settle down and crack on with the studies once they got to sort of like 15, 16, because obviously the end of the school, the end of secondary school was approaching, not too far away. And so I think at that point a lot of friendships kind of fizzled out or weren't as strong as they used to be, because when you're in those first few years of secondary school, it's like you've got nothing to lose, because you feel like you've got all the time in the world. You've got 5 years to kind of like piss about whatever you want. Like, that's how you feel in your head. It's like you've got a lot of time. It's like 5 years to an 11-year-old is quite a long time. It's like 10 years, isn't it? It's like 15 years. It's a lot longer than that. So in your head. So I think I had problems at primary school, and this is one of the things I do regret, is being so sensitive and giving people what they wanted. That's what I regret. I regret allowing people to wind me up and to just bring out the worst in me, I guess, and bring out the worst in themselves. Because as I've mentioned before, I experienced a lot of bullying at school. Oh, pity me. No. But yeah, I did actually go through a lot of bullying at school, and those people know who they are. So yeah, I had a lot of problems at primary school. I had problems with the teachers. I had problems mostly with certain students that used to gang up on you and bully you and chase you around and just try and make your life a misery from time to time. But I suppose that some of it I brought on myself because I was too quick to react. I should have just ignored people. But you know what kids are like, and it's all a bit silly now when I look back at it all. It's like when I see kids, today. It's like it just all feels a bit like daft and silly, really. But when you're in that environment, when you are that age, when you have that mentality as a kid, it can feel devastating. It can feel like the end of the world. It's much more traumatic and dramatic than it is obviously today, unless you get in the same kind of trouble from adults, whatever, which is sort of essentially the same thing to some extent, actually even worse, depending on what's going on. But certainly as a kid, things seem sort of amplified, and things you can easily take things out of proportion and exaggerate things in your head, and so I guess. I did have problems. It wasn't an easy childhood by any means, but I also had a lot of fun, and I had some really great times at Old Fleet in my primary school on Greatfield. It was a good school for the most part. I always remember not liking Miss Proctor. There was I think she was a dinner lady then, or what was called a dinner, like a sort of like dinner lady / playground assistant, whatever. I don't know what her official title was, whatever. But I just remember she was a real ugly cow, and she still is. She just didn't like me. I think she just saw me as a troublemaker or something. She saw me as, I don't know, collateral or something. I got that impression at primary school that I was kind of on my own a lot of the time. Like nobody really seemed to want to step in and do anything, and like nobody was really interested in helping really, apart from like I never really felt that there was much empathy or compassion from people there, to be honest. I always felt people were really cold and heartless. There was only really a few people that I felt that were decent at primary school, and that was Mr. Vokes. God, I don't know if he's still alive, but God bless him. Great man, great role model. He was a kind man. I really looked up to that man. I respected him a lot. He was a good man, a nice, kind, decent man. I suppose in certain ways, Mr. Gordon, the head teacher, because I don't think he didn't hate me, but I think he just disliked my behaviour, and I think he wanted me. He knew that I could do better, and I think more than anything else, I think he was just disappointed in me. He was disappointed, and I don't know. I have mixed feelings about the guy, because I don't know. I always felt that on the one hand he was like, I don't know, I always felt like he was sort of taking the piss a lot of the time with people, especially with me. Like he was just always like having a crack and like trying to take the piss, and I remember like I think he like once like called me into his office, like I think this must have been like 2000, 1999, 2000 something. And there was like, because there was a string of arson attacks in the school, and I remember like getting called in. I was like, oh, have you got anything to do with this? Like, why would you assume? Why would you think that? Why would I have anything? Why would I commit arson in my own school that I've been at? That you know exactly what I look like. You've got cameras. I know you've got cameras because I've seen them. Why would you assume that it was me? So I always felt with him. I never really truly liked the guy. I respected him to some extent, but I never really liked him, and that is something that it's a genuine thing, that you can respect him but not like them, you know. So I respected him because of his role. Oh God, I was only a kid, but I'd still respect him now if it was, you know, like if I were in another contact situation with, but I was probably still wouldn't like the man. You just never really knew where he was with the guy. I never really knew how he really felt about you, or like what he thought about you. But it's like you didn't really know what you couldn't make head or tail with him. It was a bit. It seemed like he seemed two-faced to me, really. Yeah, I don't know. I just never really liked him. That's all I can really say. I just didn't like the guy. I couldn't warm to him in any way, really. But I respected his position, and I respected what he said. And I think he tried with me. I think he maybe just felt like I was a lost cause, really. Because I think a lot of the kids in that school had come from, not all, but I'd say 40-50% of them came from not particularly healthy backgrounds, broken homes, dysfunctional households. And he knew that, and I think he just got this impression that I was a lost cause, and I think at a certain point, I think he just kind of like gave up, really. And to be fair, you know, I had been getting into a lot of fights, especially towards the back end of my time at Youthful. I was getting into a lot of problems, a lot of fights with people. Before school started, you know, there was a lot of bullying going on, and you know, kids will be kids, and boys will be boys, as they say. And you know, I just remember there was always, it's just like there was in any place. There's this hierarchy thing of know your place, and you know, these Billy Big Ball types, you know, these guys, these teens that wanted to, you know, be respected by everybody and be feared and all this crap. And you know, there was a few of them at Old Fleet like that in my year and those above. Obviously different periods of my time there. I think, to be honest, All Fleet was a mixed picture. It was a mixed bag, really, overall, of good and bad times. Some great times, wonderful times, and fantastic, wonderful memories that I'll cherish for the rest of my life. But also things times that just things that happened at school and outside of school time because of school and there was one time I remember there was one time I got, I don't know if I got told to go home or something. I'd been fighting, I think I might have swore at the teacher or something, and I got told to go to the office or whatever it was or something, and I think I just fucked off out of school, and I just I think it was just I don't know if it was something happened at the school that day or it was something happened the previous day, and I basically just I remembered, I think this was 2000, I think. It was not long before I left the school. I finished year 6, and I just remember there was one time I spent a few hours. It was a garage area. I think it's all been changed now, but very, very close to the school, not far away at all, a minute's walk, if that. And just sort of sitting there and just sort of I remember once there was my mother had a bag of sweets, and I don't know if I took up the whole bag or I certainly took a lot of the sweets, and I just remember eating them and just I was just fucking around, and but it was really one of the best, in a way, kind of one of the best moments of my life, weirdly enough. I just remember it being just having this sense of freedom, but also being scared and worried about what's going to happen when I get home. And another time when it was, I think it was, I don't know if it was bonfire night or New Year or something. I know there was fireworks. It might have been New Year or something like that. It can't have been that, can it? It can't have been New Year. Must have been bonfire night. It must have been bonfire night. It was either that or it was Halloween. It was one. I think it was Halloween or bonfire night. I'm pretty sure of it. And James Rilton, I remember, was "Oh, you could come to mine. We're having a party or something like that." Whatever he said, a kids' party. And I went to his, and I always remember I liked his sister. Thought she was quite good looking. So that must have been this would have been 2000. And I remember going on his BMX. He had studs, what they call them, studs, what do they call them, on the back of on the wheel. So I was always most of the time I was hanging out with people that I felt that were cooler than me, that had more than me. I think that's essentially what I've always felt, that I deserved more out of life, and I should have had more out of life. And I suppose that in a way that was kind of how I did it. It wasn't, but again, it wasn't it wasn't a conscious decision. I'm going to go with this person, because a lot of the time I didn't know. It was just that I just developed friends with people for various reasons, whether it's because I think at school certain kids respected me. They didn't say it, but I think they respected me because I stood up for myself at a certain point, and I didn't let people bully me as much anymore. But I was always getting into fights, even at secondary school, certainly up until 2004 or 2005 time. I was still getting into fights from time, but not as many as I had when I first started at school. I think I became a bully. I became a bully because I'd gone through so much of it myself at primary school, and so many problems at home that I think it just wore me down, and I was looking for an outlet to deal with it, and unfortunately sometimes that ended up with me bullying other people, not to the same level that people bullied me, but certainly it wasn't a consistent thing. It was just from time to time I might say something, I might go and punch somebody for nothing or whatever, or virtually for nothing, but just being aggressive, being rude, just misbehaving, just being crude and disrespectful to the teachers in the classroom, really. And so I became a nightmare, I think. at a certain point. I became a nightmare to myself and to everybody else, to some extent. And it wasn't really until sort of 2004 onwards that I started to settle down, and that's when I started getting more respected from kids and other kids, and certainly the teachers. I remember getting praised at like Isaac, and anyway, that's a whole other thing. But this is. I regret certain. There's certain. I wish I'd stayed in school more. I certainly wish I had tried harder in primary school and in secondary school. I think it was just I just wasn't cut out for it. I didn't have the intelligence. I didn't have the. I just didn't feel. I just felt that I just never really wanted to be at school. I never liked it really for the most part. I never really enjoyed it that much. And I was just always looking forward to the weekend. I was always looking forward to the next holiday, or like I remember like seeing the people who used to come and cut the grass. I always remember like looking out the window in like Mr. Ray's maths class and talking to the tractor driver from time to time, Ken. I hope he's still with us. So to me, school was both schools, primary and secondary schools was. I think overall, I suppose I, weirdly enough, enjoyed primary school more than secondary school. But in certain other ways, I think I actually enjoyed secondary more than primary because of this. I enjoyed certain things at primary school, like the back of the field was just full of trees, and you could look through. There was a gate behind the trees, and you like all the way around the perimeter of the school, and you could see right onto the farm fields there, onto like Heading area. Holden is sort of like what would go to the river, streams that led to the river, Holderness River, or the Humber, eventually. And also like hearing like noises from factories and things like this, and obviously like, we weren't that far away from industrial estates and stuff, so you could hear like sirens and noises and certain smells from time to time, especially if it was on the. I just always remember being on the second floor or third floor, whatever it was, and like just looking out, and I was just always looking for freedom. I think at school I was always looking for tranquility, some kind of spirituality, some kind of way out of this. I think I felt like I always felt at school I was trapped at that. I always felt like I enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy it. I think that's the best way to say it. So but I regret not buckling down and getting on and trying to make something of myself. But I think ultimately it wouldn't have made much of a difference anyway, because I just wasn't that smart. I wasn't a very intelligent kid. Not now. I'm not just saying that. It's just the truth. I'm not stupid. But I'm certainly not a scholar. So I made a lot of mistakes at primary school. I made lots of mistakes in secondary in regards to choosing. Like I remember, like when was it? 2005, I think it was, or 04 or 05 time, where we had to choose our GCSEs. I remember like not doing cooking because like I wanted to see this girl that I was mad about at the time, and that's if I'd have known how things were going to pan out, I wouldn't have bothered with all that stuff. I would have just gone and done the cooking. I would have also gone and done drama. I think I would have been good at that. I would have liked to have gone into acting to some extent. I think I would have been maybe quite good at it. And just sort of wasted. I think that my biggest regret overall in my life is just wasting too much time. I've wasted a lot of time throughout not so much in my teens, but certainly in my adulthood, my early adulthood. I wasted a lot of years, a lot of time on people and things that it turned out to be a waste of time. Yes, I learned things from it and whatever, but I think when you realise that precious time is, and that you can't go back and undo things, you realise that and when you start to see yourself getting older and grey hairs coming through, and you're just feeling the effects of aging going on, you start looking back and you start thinking, my God, I've wasted a lot of time. And you can't get it back. So I regret spending too much time with girls, on girls, especially when I was a teenager at secondary school, and being just really mad about certain girls, and just because I was fucking horny as hell at that time. I was in my mid-teens and testosterone fueled and all that stuff, and just my hormones were all over the place, and I was more interested in girls than I was about school for a good few years, really, 2-3 years. Although it's not like I didn't try to revise and study, because I did, but again, that's a regret. I didn't do enough. That's the truth. I didn't really truly dedicate myself to school, other schools, really. I mean, the only thing I really ever gave two shits about, excuse my language, but it's the truth, where English and like information technology, that's pretty much like science sometimes. That's it, really. I mean, sports, like I quite like sports, quite enjoyed PE. I found history boring, but it was interesting, but it was boring. Geography was quite interesting, but again, very boring. We had very boring teachers. A lot of my teachers were very dull and boring. The only teachers that I really looked up to and liked were Mr. O'Toole, Mr. Bennett, Miss Bell, sometimes Mr. Murray, Miss Pinder from time to time, the sports teachers like Miss Green, my secondary school was a mess. It was a real. I just got the impression that secondary school that nobody really, because the teachers knew that school was going to be gone in a few years anyway. It was things were on the decline and things were getting bad, and Ofsted were obviously been called in and gotten grading had been done, and it was very, very poor. And anyway, that school's gone now. The only thing that survives is the ground area. Some of it's still the same as it was. Primary school's still there, thankfully. So I regret disrespecting the teachers and causing people a lot of stress and problems. I regret caring too much and giving too much of myself to people at school and in relationships for very little in return. And again, this is not some sob story or something. This is just real life. This is the reality of this. This is how it was, and this is. I'm just stating the facts. I just spent too much time on people, wasting too much time on friends that didn't really care, that weren't interested in me, they were only interested in what they wanted to do. And I think a lot of my life I've just gone along with other people. I've just gone along for the sake of not having any arguments with people, and just sort of tagging along a lot of the time, and never really. I don't know. Maybe it's because I never really felt like I had a strong enough personality, and so like I tended to be with people that had a bit of a stronger, more interesting personality than me. But maybe. So it's kind of like a yin yang kind of situation where you've got one extreme and the other kind of thing. Certainly regret spending time with people like Daniel and Patrick and Damien, those guys. Maybe not so much Patrick. I think he was a decent guy, really, deep down, but I think he got caught up in the whole peer pressure thing that happened. But certainly Damien, that guy was a wanker. Daniel was Jekyll and Hyde type of guy. He was very. He was all right, but he was. There was just there were certain people that you were friends with that you would see. You were friends with them, but not quite really. It was like, whatever friend. But then again, it depends on what your definition of a friendship is. When, I suppose you can. It's difficult to. You have to look at it as. Like a friendship to you as an adult now is a different thing. A friendship as an adult is a very different type of thing to when you're a kid or a teenager. So you have to be careful with drawing comparisons, and looking back and reminiscing over things and being critical, overly critical, because you didn't really know any better. So it's not. I don't blame people necessarily, because people were just kids, and we were just kids and teenagers and young people, and we didn't really know any different, and we were all learning, growing in our own ways, and so I don't put any massive blame on anybody. It's just that I regret that certain things that I did more than anything now, looking back. But again, I was a kid, I was a teenager, but still, I think there was certainly some things I could have changed and done better, or not done at all. So, yeah, I think disrespecting my parents as well, arguing with my parents, maybe not being there for my siblings enough for over the years, especially my sister. I didn't protect her enough. Just wasting time on people, I think, is my biggest regret. Wasting time on people that I felt wanted the same thing as I did, or that we had more in common than we really did. Where I built up a picture of somebody in my head that turned out was very wrong. But I guess we all have to mature. We all have to grow up. We all have to learn from our mistakes and realise that we're not robots, and that we're all blank canvases up until a certain point. And you have to gain experience and learn about yourself and learn about life and about human nature. And I didn't know anything about psychology at school. I mean, I knew like very simple things like what like how certain decisions and certain things that I felt would be good or not so good, but I didn't really know about human psychology really until I was in my latter part of my teens, early 20s. So I suppose what I'm saying is, I think if I could go back with the mentality of a 34-year-old in terms of the wisdom and things that I've learned, and go back into the body of a child, I'd be quite happy really. But I certainly wouldn't want to go back and have to relive everything all over again and have to go through that long period of development and change and learning and difficulties, because it's been a very long path, long journey of a lot of mistakes. And I think ultimately that's if I had to sum up my life in one word, that is what it would be. It would be a mistake. Because I just feel that like a lot of the time what I've done is a mistake. I didn't really think things through properly. I didn't really always know what I was getting myself into. I didn't care enough. I was too apathetic. I was too carefree during times of my life. I didn't understand myself enough. I think that's one of my biggest regrets. I didn't try to understand myself enough, and that got me into a hell of a lot of problems over the years. I think most of all I regret treating my parents the way I did and bringing the trouble that I brought home, that didn't it was a reflection of what was going on at home, but it wasn't directly anything to do with them, I suppose, and it wasn't fair on them, and they had a lot of problems because of what happened at school, and I deeply regret that the things that happened to my mother and father because of what happened at school. It wasn't really their fault, I suppose. It certainly didn't help situations. It was really bad for a period of time. It was really bad at home, at school, and a combination of them together that brought on more problems that we didn't need. I didn't need. They didn't need. My family overall didn't need. And that led to all sorts of consequences that I don't want to get into, because they're very sensitive things and things that I don't need to share and I don't want to share. That happened with me and my siblings, especially me, my sister Jennifer, and my brother Christopher. That I don't want to go into anymore. But you know, it's well, even Kevin, really, even my older brother, he suffered from it as well, and I think everybody, to some extent, everybody felt the consequences of things in different ways, and I regret, not that everything was my fault, obviously not, but there was, getting into fights and getting excluded from school from time to time, and my parents having to come to the school, my mother having to come to the school and talk to the head teacher and whatever, and just it was really sad, and sometimes I look back on it and it's kind of heartbreaking, really. It's quite, in certain ways it's been a bit of a heartbreaking path, because I think it ruined my self-confidence, it ruined my parents as well, and it destroyed, I just think of the years as there was more and more divide between my siblings and my family, and I've really wished that hadn't have happened. I regret slagging off my city as much as I did. I regret treating people with suspicion too much, being too passive aggressive with some people, being too demanding, being too impulsive at times, being too obsessive with certain people and certain things, being too intrusive, I guess, at times. And also letting people walk all over me, letting people put me down and try and belittle me and knock my confidence even more, and try and put me in my place, and I regret that as well. I regret quite a lot of things, actually, when I think about it. But it doesn't. But having said that, it doesn't eat me up or keep me awake at night necessarily. It's only when I sit back and reflect and really think about it that you realise the things that you're not so happy about your past and yourself. I think if I had to choose three things, the top three things that I regret, one would be not being a decent enough son, I think, at times. Two, it's probably not always being there for my siblings when I should have been. And three, I regret jumping into relationships too early. I think that those are my three main regrets. But if I had to add to it, I'd say, to make it to five, I'd say that I regret not trying harder at school and college. And number five is giving away too much of myself and too much of my heart to people that didn't deserve it in the end. I think those are definitely my top 5 regrets. We can all look back on our lives and say, what ifs and buts, and but things were how they were, and I made the choices I made the decisions I decided to go down the path that I did. I woke up every day and made the decisions for my own life, just as you do for your own, and have done for your life for the most part. So we all have to look in the mirror at some point and say, well, you know what, look, this is your life. You are where you are, and maybe not completely, but a lot of it, or at least a good 75% of it, let's say, is down to yourself. And at a certain point, you just have to say, well, okay, fine, that is. And you just have to, at some point, say, well, okay, I can't undo any of that. I can't change any of that stuff. So what can I do now? What can I do going forward? Or how can I prevent myself from making those mistakes again? Like, what can I do differently now that I know all of that stuff, that I've learnt more about myself, that I've made all of these mistakes? Like, you're always going to be making mistakes. That's just a fact. Until the day you die, you're going to make mistakes all the time. But there's certain things that, there's always going to be unforeseen things that happen, and that you didn't think through enough. You didn't, things that just surprises, whatever, things that happened that sometimes don't have anything to do with you really, and things sort of force you into a corner at certain times in life. So there's only so many things you can do, but you do have to grow a spine of of accountability and responsibility, and at a certain point in your life, and say, I am to blame for a lot of my own problems, whether indirectly or directly, because of the way that you responded to certain things, or didn't respond, or just didn't care enough, didn't think, just didn't plan enough, didn't care enough about yourself, about your life. And I think at a certain point you have to develop some coping mechanisms. You have to build your confidence and your self-esteem to get through, to get better, to get healthier, stronger mentally, physically, emotionally, that everything helps, to build a life that you want to look back at in the future and have less regrets than you have now, hopefully, about the past. So, when you look back on that, whether it's at 80, 90, 100, whatever, 50, everyone goes through stages of life where we all reminisce and look back and think about our paths, like where we've been, what we've done, who we've been with, our psychological development, and where we want to go from here on out. And I certainly, from this point onwards, I want to get my freedom back. I want to have my independence, and I want to feel some ways that I used to feel when I was younger. And I know what I have to do to get to that point. Now, again, I might be making a mistake by doing that. But a lot of the times in life, you don't know if you're going to be making a mistake. You don't always know if you're doing it. And we all do things at the time that we think are right for us, or we think are the smartest, best ideas and best choices. And because we might not have a lot of other options, and so we do what we feel we have to do sometimes. But even those things can turn out to be mistakes and cause a lot more problems in the end than they were worth, rather than doing other things that were more difficult. So, life's hard. It's complicated. It's messy for you and me, for various reasons. And the best thing I can say to you is that, do you know what? And just coming back to, I think, another major regret, and this is the last thing I'm going to say today. Overall, I would say is not spending enough time with my older relatives over the years, especially my grandfather, grandmother, my uncles, my aunts. I regret that a lot, and people that I really respected and cared about and didn't stay in contact with enough, and could have done, and it wasn't a deliberate thing. It was just I just was going on my own path and going on my own way in life, and I never forgot people. It's just I was just caught up with whatever was going on at the time, and sometimes I felt that people didn't really want to hear from me anymore, and maybe I was going to be ended up opening a can of worms kind of thing if I got in touch with people again. So I think I just felt that with certain people over the years, it's not just family, it was other people as well, and they know who they are as well. I just felt that at a certain point I just had to say, whether it's right or wrong, I just had to draw a line under it. I had to just call that kind of that part of my life over, and I just had to move on. And that's you know, I think there's nothing wrong about having regrets, as long as you acknowledge them and are real with yourself, and try and live your life better from here on out. You know, the best thing you can do is just to move on. You know, it's like, you know, there's friends and people that I liked and things when I was a kid and a teenager and young adult that I'll never see again, that I'll never have any contact with again, and that's regretful, that's sad. But also I'm glad that I had those times and those memories. But it does upset you. It does bother you. It does play on your mind from time to time. But there comes a point where you just have to say, that was then, and that's it. You know. That's how it was then, and it's not like that anymore. And it's a hard pill to swallow. It's a hard thing to deal with, to accept that you've changed for the better or worse, other people have changed for the better or worse. You know, people's paths have gone in different directions, and that's just the way that life is. Everybody's made bad decisions, poor decisions. By God, I've made some pretty terrible decisions in my life, even in the last few years, believe me. But it hasn't all been bad. Some good things have come of it. And I think that's the best thing I can say before I finish, is that it wasn't all bad. There were things I regret, but a lot of good things happened because of the things I did and didn't do over the years. And so because of that, I'm still glad to be alive. I'm still thankful to have my memories and to have met some people, even though I'm glad I met them, but I'm glad that I'm not their friends anymore. I'm glad I'm not their partners anymore. I'm glad that I don't have anything to do with them anymore. You know, I certainly still miss some people and some places and some times and memories and things, but I don't want to go back to it. I wouldn't want to go back to it yet. I think even if I had the choice to go back, I mean, I think I'd rather just see it played out on a TV rather than actually go and physically go. Apart from a handful of things, I think, you know, I like seeing that a girl, Rebecca, that I really was really mad about, and I really genuinely loved that girl to pieces. Like, I really genuinely really cared about her, like deeply cared about her, and I would have loved to have been her husband. I would have loved to have settled down and had children with her, but that didn't pan out. It didn't work out. It just didn't happen, and that's sometimes I regret that maybe I should have done more. And it's sad. It's really sad to talk about it. It's really, because I don't think she felt the same way that I did, and that's something that eats me up sometimes, where, you know, that's a hard thing to deal with. That's really hard to deal with when you put everything into someone and you learn, or you think, I'm pretty confident that it just wasn't reciprocated. That's hard, man. That's really hard. And and that applies to certain friendships I had over the years as well. So, you know, I've got my demons. I've got my I have things I have to deal with. Not every day, but from time to time, that eat me up sometimes. But then you have to just say to yourself, you have to snap out of it, and you have to get on with the rest of your day, the rest of your life, because you've only got so many years ahead of you, if you're lucky. You know, what do you want to do? Do you want to spend the rest of your life living in a state of regretfulness, or do you want to get out there and do things you enjoy and that bring you happiness and kind of make you forget about it temporarily, whatever? You know, there's nothing wrong in being real with yourself and contemplating and facing up to your past and to yourself and to possibilities things that could have happened. But that's fine. But when you get to a point where it becomes obsessive and where you're dwelling on it all the time, that's when it becomes an issue, because it tears you down. It eats away. It's like a virus. It's like a cancer disease of the mind. You know, it really destroys you over time. Like it ruins you. Regrets are horrible things to have, and I wouldn't wish certain things that I have in my head on anybody, really. But having said that, a lot of people have got much worse regrets and things, and real genuine trauma and problems and memories that I luckily don't have. So to conclude, you know, it's been I've had quite a long life, really. At 34, I've done a lot of things, not as many as I would have liked to have done at this point. I haven't achieved as much as I would like, but I've achieved some things. I've done some things, and when I look at that, it makes me feel better about myself. That I have done some things, I have achieved some things. I broke away from the poverty cycle, I guess you would call it. I've achieved a degree. I've travelled a little bit. You know, I've taught. I've kind of had a career, I guess, to some extent. You know, I get to live abroad, at least for the time being. I've met some wonderful people. I went to visit. I've been lucky enough to spend time in Australia with my uncle. Had some fantastic moments. I'm in many respects, as much as there are certain things I don't like about myself, there are certainly a lot of things I do. And when I look at myself in the mirror sometimes, and think, do you know what? It hasn't been so bad. It could have been a lot better, admittedly. But do you know what? It's been a fucking good run, really. It's been a good life for the most part, I think. And you know, my regrets and things that they're never going to go away. I'm going to have them for the rest of my life. But it's how you deal with them. It's what you choose to do that matters in the end. It's how you deal with those emotions and thoughts. That's what it's not. It's the thoughts and emotions don't define you. It's what you do with them. You either let them destroy you and slowly, you know, slowly and progressively tear you down, bring you down, or you get up and you fight against those things. And that's my plan. My plan is to keep on fighting and keep on living for as long as I can, and to keep on just, you know, bearing the burdens of you know, my own decisions and problems and things that I guess brought on myself, but in ways that I think are healthy and ways that I feel that I can cope with myself and my life. because it is hard to be me actually sometimes. And I'm not just saying that because I want the violins to start playing something. It is difficult. It is difficult being me sometimes. It's not always easy. Just like it isn't easy, I imagine, to be anybody else. Everyone's got their own cross to bear. Everyone's dealing with shit on a daily basis that you don't know about because they don't talk about it, because they don't want to bother you. They don't want you to feel sorry for them. They don't want any, and I don't want any sympathy. I don't want any superficial sympathy or anything really. I just want to document things on my channel that I feel that are important, that I think that other people might find interesting and might be able to relate to. And that is the only intention behind these videos really. I'm not looking for anything. I just want to be able to have a place where I can share my thoughts and emotions just openly and honestly as I can, and that's what I try to do with this channel over the last since I set it up. The shorts that I have on my channel just before I finish, they're a representation kind of how I feel at certain times, and to some extent my personality, and they're all a bit odd, a bit weird at times, a little bit cringy maybe sometimes, but they represent something, and I don't know if that shows, if that comes through. If you look carefully, you'll see it. So anyway, that's it for this video. I'm going to go now. I'll talk to you again very soon. Thank you very much.